Welcome to AI Driven, a podcast about using AI for business. AI Driven is produced and hosted by Cognistics, an AI company based in Pittsburgh with offices in the US, Latin America, and Asia. Welcome to AI Driven. I'm Patty Maldonado. This week on AI Driven, we're looking at AI's ROI. So many executives and business owners feel that they need to and they must invest in AI solutions to stay relevant and to keep up with their competition and with technology trends. It's a needed expense, but many wonder how to calculate that return on investment. With us today is data scientist Justin Waltrip to give us the business and technology perspective on this issue. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Patty.
So we talk about this issue of ROI and return on investment. I know that you at Cognistics, we hear a lot. We work a lot with the customer. We take their feedback and implement it when developing products, especially with Square. I was wondering, what are you hearing from business owners and executives about the product and the return on investment, that element that is very much on their minds?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think what we hear from a lot of business owners and the people that are actually making these decisions is that they sometimes come in with expectations of very immediate return on investment for some of these AI solutions. And I think that's one big misconception, is that not all AI solutions are going to be an immediate source of money into your company. A lot of times these are longer term investments that are going to take time, and they're going to take investment in the technology and the people and the processes that are behind these AI technologies to really make them useful and increase employee productivity in the long run. I think there are a lot of news stories out there recently that are talking about like a lot of immediate ROI and saying that you can just use this tool and it's just instantly going to completely revolutionize the way that you're operating your company. But realistically, that's not how these solutions work. They take time and they take iteration and feedback in order to really customize it to your particular business case and make sure that the tool is operating exactly as it should be.
So when you're talking to customers and discussing a product like Square, for example, what are their expectations and how does that drive the development of the product and new updates and iterations?
Yeah, so in terms of how it drives the different updates, I think it's important to make sure that the customers understand the technology, at least at a base level, so that they understand what the technology is going to be good at and what these AI models are not going to be good at. Because we don't want to have clients with really unrealistic expectations about what problems the AI can actually solve. But we also want to make sure that when they're interacting with it, that they're using it to its fullest potential. And so I think one of the first things that we do with a lot of new clients, especially when they're concerned about how the AI technology is actually going to lead to that ROI, is making sure that they have some education about the realistic capabilities of the AI, and that way we can set very achievable targets for them. And I think the other thing that helps us is to really dive into their actual problems and think about how the AI solution can address those problems specifically. I think there are a lot of products out there right now that are kind of forcing problems on these customers, saying, we have this AI solution and the way that you're doing it doesn't work. But in reality, like I was saying earlier, you can't just invent a problem and try to solve it with AI, you're basically guaranteeing that you're going to run into issues and the employee adoption is not going to be very good because you're not actually solving the problems that people interact with on a daily basis. So I think it's really important when we start working with clients initially to, instead of just trying to push something on them, listen to them and talk to them about their specific problems, and then think about how some of the AI solutions that we've built can actually address those problems in a reasonable way.
So, have you made any adjustments, or what kind of adjustments and changes have you made based on the client's feedback?
Yeah, so I think adding ways to get client feedback is probably one of the biggest things that you can do when you're starting an AI initiative at your company, because these solutions aren't perfect. There are going to be issues, and the most important way to address that is by collecting that feedback from the clients and using it to potentially address those problems. So I think one of the biggest things that we've seen in the last year or so is that it's very important to add flexibility and add customization to our platform, and I think pretty much all AI platforms in general. And the only way that we would be able to actually implement those customizations and add that flexibility to the tool is by collecting that feedback from the clients, and doing that in a way that integrates with the workflows that they already have. So in particular for Square, our enterprise question answering tool, I think one of the first things we do is we let people use it. And as they get responses back, like they ask a question and then the model provides an answer, we collect thumbs up and thumbs down feedback from them. So did you like this response or did you not like this response? And then we also try to ask them for some more subjective feedback. So they could say, I didn't like the tone of this, or I wish it had referenced this document when it provided the answer. And that type of feedback is really helpful for us because we can go in and we can make tweaks to the behavior of the model specifically for that client in order to address some of those concerns down the road. And especially if some of these AI tools are going to be customer facing. So maybe the client is reaching out to us to build them an AI solution, but they're going to make it available to their customers. We need to be aware that there are going to be business restrictions on the way that AI can be used. We can't have a chat bot that says crazy things or says things against the company policies or answers in a tone that just doesn't really align with that company. And so that's where that feedback comes in to play. And we really need to listen to the client and think about how we can actually address their concerns.
Right, right. How should companies calculate the ROI when it comes to an AI business tool?
So I think it depends on what problem you are trying to address. I think I'll try to speak to the productivity aspects just because that's one of the biggest places where we see the potential ROI of these AI solutions. And it's important to do kind of comparative testing when you're thinking about AI solutions. So let's say you are a legal company and you have to review a bunch of documents every week in order to extract different pieces of information. Like maybe you need to know the title of the agreement, you need to know who the parties in the agreement are, maybe you need to know if there's a specific termination provision. That kind of thing takes time. And as a business owner, you need to pay employees to go through these documents and do those manual reviews. And so when you talk about bringing an AI solution into this, we're not talking about replacing that employee, but we're talking about using artificial intelligence to make the processes that they already go through and their existing workflows more efficient. And so that means that they can potentially review more documents in the same amount of time, or they can just review the documents that they need to review faster, which allows them to focus more on communicating with their clients or doing more high level tasks in terms of thinking about the way that they can synthesize all of that information. And so when you're talking about calculating return on investment in that situation, you need to think about how much that employee costs and how much time you're potentially saving them from doing this kind of tedious information extraction level work when they could instead be spending things that might be more productive for your company, like processing more documents internally or just reaching out to more potential clients and bringing in more sources of revenue.
Do you think that's a tough sell? Getting them to view it in that way? Or are companies adjusting?
I think companies are adjusting, and I think it's because the technology has kind of surpassed a certain threshold of performance. I think a couple years ago, if you tried to sell people on some of these really marginal improvements where maybe they can save you like 10% of your time by incorporating this really crazy AI workflow into your business, I think that's a much harder sell. But given the advancements that we've had over the last few years, especially in language models, I think that number is much higher. So instead of only saving maybe 10% of the time, we're talking about at least over 50% of the time saved by using these models. And I'm not talking about removing the human from this process, but just helping the human analyze this information more effectively. So if they're looking for specific provisions in an agreement, helping them to identify those agreements very quickly, even if there's thousands of pages that they would otherwise need to search through. And if they need to summarize it or extract a specific piece of information, we can have the AI do that and provide a couple of examples. And then the human can very quickly review those and see where they're coming from in the document to be able to actually generate a final report. And I think because the quality of these models has gotten so good in the past couple of years, it's a lot easier for businesses to recognize how much time this could potentially save them. And I think that is helping them understand how the return on investment could actually be calculated for a technology like this and why it would be worth the investment.
Right. I mean, as you know, as they test and use more applications, they become more educated about the technology and what they can do with the technology, or what they should be able to do with the technology. What are some intangible benefits that companies should consider that maybe they're not considering?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because it's also something that I think a lot of people appreciate, that there are going to be benefits of bringing AI into their company besides just additional revenue. But sometimes it's very hard to quantify and kind of explain what those are. But generally, I think there are a couple big ones. One is just improved experience. So, especially with Square, our goal is to make employees more productive by helping to automate some of the more tedious parts of the work that they would do every day. No one enjoys opening up a 100-page HR document and trying to Control F to find the specific language that they might need to reference. And if they don't know exactly where it is, maybe reading through different parts of it to find exactly the information they're looking for. That's not generally a process that your employees actually enjoy. And so if we can help to automate that process by having the AI take over some of those components, then we could potentially improve that employee's experience during the day and help them focus on some of the more interesting and high level aspects of the job that they actually do. So I think increased employee satisfaction is something that's definitely hard to quantify directly, but I think in the long run, you're going to see improved employee retention. And by kind of staying on that cutting edge of technology, I think you're also going to draw in some more experienced employees, and you're going to ultimately lead to just an improvement of your technology team. So I think that's one big intangible benefit that's kind of hard to understand, and certainly that would mirror itself on the customer side. If you have customer facing I think an improved customer experience is definitely possible, but you certainly need to be careful about the way that you roll out these systems to make sure that you're transparent about the fact that you're using AI and actually make sure that it's benefiting the customer experience instead of taking away from it.
Got it. Now, I guess, we know that there are a lot of new products that are coming out all the time. And the cost of these products might be high now, but do you expect the cost to drop as we see more and more products and more AI being used in these applications? Because that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've seen this with really every technology that comes out. So as these AI technologies become more widespread and more standardized throughout the industry, economies of scale are going to kick in, and it's going to just overall reduce the cost of development and implementation. And I think from the perspective of someone who actually deals with the implementation of these systems on a day-to-day basis, I've seen the tools around building AI systems drastically improve over the last 2 years. So I think that's another thing that's going to lead to the overall cost of these solutions dropping, is the fact that you don't have to build all of this yourself. You don't necessarily need a whole team of data scientists to be able to bring AI into your company. You just might need a couple good software engineers who are familiar with some of the APIs that might be available and some of the tools that they can use to be able to build some of these systems in a way that rivals what a whole team of data scientists would have been able to do a couple of years ago. So I think since the technology is becoming more widespread, and because there's these continuous improvements in the AI frameworks, tools, and also the cloud services that are offered, I think these technologies are just going to become more and more affordable.
Yeah, and that will really encourage more companies not only to invest, but to really see more of a return on investment if they see that they're not having to invest so much at the beginning. And I bet you in a year's time, the consumers will be much more educated about what to look for and what to expect when looking at a variety of products. So do you have any additional thoughts on this topic of ROI and AI solutions?
No, I think we've covered it all today.
So thank you for joining us. And to learn more about Cognistics, visit cognistics.com, and that's COGNISTX. To schedule a demo or to speak with our team, email Cody, CODY, at cognistics.com. And if there's an AI topic or trend, or if you have a question about AI that you would like us to cover, email us at info@cognistics.com, and we'll be happy to take your questions and your suggestions and put it to our experts, Justin, and other members of our team. So thanks again, Justin, and we'll be back in a few more weeks with the new show from AI Driven.
Thanks for listening in. Learn more about how AI drives what we do at cognistics.com.